I'm Derek Barichello, Illinois Valley News Editor for Shaw Local. I'm with Utica Fire Chief Ben Brown. Last Tuesday, Election Day actually, Brown and his team at Utica Fire Department and crews from Mavis 25 team rescued a family of three, a mother, father, and son with special needs, from a fall of about 30 feet at French Canyon at Starved Rock State Park. The mother and son were taken to OSF St. Francis in Peoria in a medical helicopter, and it was reported they have since made recoveries. Chief, when you get the call there's three people who have fallen, what's going through your mind?
Well, the first thing that we have to figure out is when there's multiple people, do we have the appropriate amount of ambulances and people coming to treat them? It's more than just, it's a little bit more resources required than your normal response. The second question that pops in your head is that where are they located and how are we going to get to them? We have multiple emergency access points throughout the park, and we know just through past history where certain canyons are, what injuries that we should expect. And then where they're at. So they told us they were at the bottom of French Canyon. So usually we'd just go in the bottom, but French Canyon has two tiers in the waterfall. So they're actually in the middle tier of that. So that was a little bit different. And our dispatcher was able to tell us, hey, they're on the top side. So that's a short walk for us. So very quick response. So, now multiple people, we need to have multiple ambulances, additional personnel to carry out. So that's more mutual aid depending on our amount of people that we have coming in for calls. And then, as in this case, do we need more than one helicopter or helicopters in general? So That's all stuff that has to get coordinated and communicated with the dispatch center, with our people, and with the group.
So knowing the park really well is really important for this.
Yeah, and we have response guidelines for the park that over the years we've developed. If you're going to Wildcat Canyon, you'll enter here and you need this equipment. Or if you're going to St. Louis Canyon, you enter here and you need this equipment. And these are the landing zones that are closest. We have pre-designated landing zones throughout the park that'll put the helicopter closest to us where we're coming out without having to do much maneuvering of people around. Because the flight crew lands, but then we got to get them to where we're at as well. So.
Yeah. Have you ever seen multiple people, a fall with multiple people?
Yeah, so this isn't our first time with multiple people. It's the first one I can remember at French Canyon. But we've had a couple instances at the back veranda where people have climbed over the fence and into the grass area and fallen down. Both of those were at night, a couple years apart. And those are significant injuries. It's pretty steep, pretty rugged terrain back there, and it's very, very difficult access for us to get to them.
Yeah. What challenges does it add when you're actually there? You talked about the challenges of dispatch, but then when you're there, is it?
Well, now you got to maintain. So like our kids, we had a family. So now we have kids up top. We have mom and son at the bottom, and then dad who climbed down and was trying to help them. So we're navigating 5 people instead of just like one person that fell. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah. And then, Starved Rock and Matheson, that adds a lot to what your department has to be prepared for, all different kinds of emergencies with the terrain that you're working with. How much planning and practice does that take to be able to respond to something like that?
Well, it takes a little bit. There's multiple levels to that question. The first one is that we meet, us and Oglesby work very, very well together. We train together, but we also sit together with the park staff and Senator Resin. We do 2 separate meetings. We do an initial meeting with the park staff and the local Oglesby fire chief and us, and then we and the conservation police, and we talk about things that are immediate needs, and then we do actually a large scale meeting with our political officials, so like Senator Resin and Amy Briel this year, be Lance Yednock in the past, and then we involve IDOT and the state police and the conservation police and the sheriff's department, North Utica PD, the news agencies, just so that everybody's on the same page, and because we deal with not just the fall and the medical part, but we got to be able to get into the park. So in the past history, we've had traffic problems and parking problems, and a lot of those have been solved by using those meetings. So those are the meetings we do, and then training wise, our personnel and Oglesby, and we open it up to all the Mavis Division 25 members as well. We do essentially what the state would consider rope operations class. We just split it up over 6 or 7 nights, and we start the basics. Let's tie knots. This is how you do a rope rescue. You need to know these knots, and we practice with the lights on. Then we practice with the lights on and gloves. Then we practice with the lights off and gloves. And we practice with lights off and helmet flashlights like we would be doing in the dark, because you have to go out there at all hours of the day and night. So once we go from ropes and knots, and then we set up the mechanical advantage systems and use that equipment on the bay floor. Then we do it in a low angle setting, which is like a steep hill.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do it in the high angle setting, where we're going completely vertical. And then we usually culminate our training with a Saturday afternoon at the park, where we do actually like simulated rescues.
Yeah, what's the hardest of that?
So probably the hauling the equipment, setting up the site, and actually the simulated rescue. That's the most, that's a lot of technical stuff, making sure that we have the rope in the right angles, and everything's tied off the right way. And it's live rescue. You can't, if something changes or happens, we got to be able to adapt and move it around. So it's good practice. And where we do it, we have to hike all that equipment in, which isn't uncommon for us or Oglesby when we go to Matheson or Starved Rock, that we have to hike the equipment in upwards of close to probably about a half a mile. You're walking with those equipment bags, and a normal trip to the park for a fall that we don't know where they're at, they're in the middle, the bottom, that takes our full rope response, would include upwards of 6 to 8 equipment bags. So that's 6 to 8 people just in carrying equipment. We haven't added the person into carrying the person to the boat or carrying them out to the ambulance. So once we start the operation, we have all of our equipment in there. Then we have to figure out, okay, now if we're going down to the bottom, did we get river rescue coming to help us with the boat to move them across the river to a different location to take them to the helicopter? Or are we bringing them up, like in this case, this past Tuesday, we went straight up. It was better for us to go up, and then we carried them out to the awaiting ambulances, and they drove to the landing zone.
Is that your call as a fire chief, is to make those calls?
So yeah, whoever the incident commander is, and usually they'll, like in Tuesday, I was the one that was there. So yeah, the senior member there that's running the calls. So on Tuesday we had the call. I was the first one there, actually assessed. We had 2 patients. I'm like, all right, so we have 2 patients. We have a 30-foot fall approximately, if not maybe a little bit more. Simulate the injuries that could possibly mechanism of injury. I'm like, all right, so these are considered level 1 trauma patients. So that we call the helicopter. We notify Life Flight. Life Flight's awesome, very good. So when I was able to say, hey, I have 2 patients, I'll need 2 helicopters. That dispatcher on the other end, who's coordinating the helicopters, will then relay that information to the pilots, so they know when they're coming into our landing zones, hey, there's 2 helicopters in the area, you and another one. And we are able, almost all of our landing zones will hold 2 helicopters without any issue. We start pushing it with 3, but we can always maneuver them to a different spot. But yeah, they were able to land both of them. And then I knew that we were going to do a technical rescue. We were going to have to use ropes. It was very slick conditions, muddy. There was water in the canyon bottom where they were at. Our rescues were slipping and sliding. So knowing that we need to go up, then I initiated the technical rescue team response, just because we had 14 of our members there, but the team also brought 14 more, and that just made it smooth and efficient. There was no question about people and overwork and stuff. It was all covered with that. So
yeah,
those are the decisions that are going on.
And you've been fire chief for how long?
Almost, it was October of 2013.
So you've done quite a few of these.
We've done a few of these, yes.
So is it still more like improvising and using that knowledge in the back of your head?
Yeah, you take your past experiences. You have your base stuff that we got to do. We know we need an anchor for this haul system, and we know we need an anchor for our safety line, and we know we need people to carry out, but yet we need to adapt to the time of day. This was a Tuesday night at about 6 o'clock. So I have more people around than, Tuesday at, 2 p.m. It's not, parking lot was empty. There wasn't many cars in it compared to a 2 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon when the weather's 75 degrees. So, we have to also think about parking and traffic. Where are we going to put all the equipment that's coming? so we had enough space. So those are the things that just every situation's a little dynamic, but the core stuff is the same.
Yeah, interesting. And do you think the hikers are getting better at Starved Rock, or safer?
So I think that the call volume for actual falls, like somebody climbing and falling, is down, and that's been an aggressive campaign that we've participated in, as well as the conservation police, the park staff, and the park foundation. You see around the conservation worker with his hand up, and it says "Stop! Don't climb! Don't go off trails! Don't go in the water." We help sponsor that campaign, and it's worked. It really has. The park is still a lot of our calls, about average about 16% of our call volume for the year, but that includes the lodge and just the sheer volume that 2.5 million visitors visit the park. We do a lot of trail injuries. Somebody's overheated, they're not drinking enough fluids, they roll their ankle on a step, they trip down the stairs and break an ankle or an arm or wrist. Like, we do that kind of stuff a lot more. And those are still labor intensive, but they're not as labor intensive as doing a full, rope rescue response.
Yeah. And anyone joining Utica Fire Department, this isn't your typical small town 1,000 people fire department.
Right. We do have some very interesting places. With the park, it is a labor intensive thing. And there's students that come through class that are like, "Oh, I'm coming on the weekend because that's a higher chance to go to the park." And we're like, "Yeah, it's a great chance to help you carry somebody out of the park." It's a different experience. But yeah, it's different than your normal volunteer fire department.
Yeah. And then I have to ask this too, just because it's the first thing that I always see is, whenever we report that there's a fall on social media, there's always the rush to, oh, it's somebody from Chicagoland, oh, it's somebody off the trail. Even before the details come out, how does that make you feel when you see comments?
You're always going to have those people that know everything, right? Even though they know nothing. The best part, when we read those, the world of technology. We were on the scene. I mean, I think the first rescue had just gone over the edge, and we are already getting notifications from the news agencies from the Chicago area looking for information, and they're just trying to fill their news stuff, but we're still in the middle of the operation, right? And people are already assuming that it's somebody from Chicago. Statistically, they're not from around here. Have we had local people fall? Yeah, absolutely. Were they off the trail doing stuff? Yeah, absolutely. Because they think they're invincible. But to us, it is what it is. Not every situation is somebody off the trail climbing and falling. This situation was a perfect example of that. They were just stepped off the edge of the trail a little bit and just happened to be where they're at. That it was a bad situation. The park is a safe place as long as you maintain, some general common sense. Stay on the trail, and you can see the bottom of the canyon from the bottom of all the canyons. So you can get into all of them. You don't need to lean over the edge to see it. And this isn't the West Coast. This isn't hard rock. It's sandstone. It just happens to be hard enough. When we do our rope operations, if you see pictures, all of our members are wearing helmets, and it's not uncommon to hear someone yell "rock," and it's because as they're moving the stuff around, we are breaking off pieces of that sandstone and it falling, and we've been hitting the head or the arms, and it's, it hurts. But it's the nature of the geography that we're in.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate the time today, and that was Utica Fire Chief Ben Brown, and thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Yep.